Welcome to Dark Horses. I am Danielle Garay-Goichea.
And I'm Sabina Cobo. Welcome. Happy to be here.
And today we have the honor of having Samantha Tams with us. She has been in the fashion industry for a very long time, and she's worked as a buyer for Saks Fifth Avenue, Mexico City, and recently, a couple of years ago, co-founded the Latin American Fashion Summit. Hi, Samantha. How are you?
Hi guys, I'm super excited being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you. So you co-founded Latin American Fashion Summit, everybody knows it as LAFS, to elevate Latin American talent. What gap or need did you see that led you to do this?
Yes, well, actually, it's very funny because people think that LAFS exists, I think, only recently, 8 years ago. But I think that what led us to LAFS was our experience of 20 years in the fashion industry. Like you mentioned, I was a buyer at Saks Fifth Avenue, and when I was a buyer there, I had to say no to so many designers because of the lack of experience or the lack of, I don't want to say skill sets, but like there wasn't enough visibility in the Latin American industry for fashion designers, but they weren't equipped with the right skill sets in order to pursue an international opportunity. So whenever that opportunity showed up, sometimes they'll fail short. And as a buyer, I realized that, and I had to say a lot of no's. And without knowing, I feel like LAFS started way back there, like back in 2007 when I was a buyer and I was saying no to a lot of Latin American creatives. Fast forward to 2018, well, actually 2017 during the summer, me and my business partner, Stefania, we were like brainstorming on, she was based in New York, I was back in Mexico, and we were just saying like, there's a lot of talent coming out of Latin America. She had this point of view, which was very interesting. There was this kind of like, I don't know, the buyers were really interested because of the Joan Ortiz factor that back in 2014, Joan Ortiz launched her collection in Modo Operandi, and actually the buyers started noticing something coming out of Latin America for the first time. Granted that Oscar de la Renta and Carolina Herrera are also Latin American brands, but they were profiled more as an American brand, right? They were Latin American designers, but they were American brands. So when Joanna happened and this like huge factor happened and the internet was already exploding and Instagram and all that, the buyers started turning their heads into our region. And this was the right place for us. We spotted this gray area. So buyers were turning their heads into our region. The designers were always looking up to like an opportunity with them, but they didn't know how to connect. A, B, not everybody has, the money to go to New York Fashion Week and show. And even if you show, nobody guarantees that the buyers are going to stop by your booth. And C, we were really, really, interested in the fact that there had to be education behind these introductions. It wasn't just a networking event. It was an event where all of these buyers and all of these designers would know each other, but we needed to prepare all of these emerging creatives with the right skill sets in retail merchandising, in marketing, in tech, and sustainability, everything that the buyers were looking for at that moment and that they didn't know how to handle. So I feel like that was the gray area. Like two different groups wanted to connect. They didn't know how. We created the space for them to connect. And it started like that. It started like an event that later on evolved into a much bigger platform of what it is today. And it's been quite a road, but I feel like we were in the right place at the right time and with a purpose, which is the most important thing in entrepreneurship. There was a purpose, there was something that was solving a problem. And I mean, I have to say, it is the most important platform in Latin America that connects local talents to international opportunities. So that's how it started.
As an entrepreneur, how was the transition for you? From being a buyer to becoming not only the connector, but the organizer the mentor, because you've mentioned the word education several times. How do you feel? And do you feel at some times that it wasn't working out?
I mean, to answer the first part of your question, um, coming from the corporate world and going into the entrepreneurial world is quite a transition, let me tell you. And I don't think that everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Actually, if you ask me, I was very comfortable in the corporate world. Very comfortable. I wasn't cut up for the entrepreneurial world. I didn't know what I was heading towards, you know? Being an entrepreneur is extremely complicated. It is extremely, um, you have to have another set of skill sets. Let me tell you, you need to develop a thick skin. You need to really be driven by your purpose. You really, there's the resilience component. If you're a person that is not willing to be on the edge all the time, because being an entrepreneur can be like receiving the best news and the worst news ever in the same day, and you need to cope with that, you know. And I wasn't equipped for that. I honestly was a very organized worker in you know, my corporate world. I was exceeding expectations from my team or from my team and from my leadership and everything, but being an entrepreneur is a completely different thing. Being an entrepreneur has been something that I have been developing and learning how to be. We were so driven by this passion. We were so driven by creating change and disrupting the system back then. Remember, like, it was all about like, you can't sit with us, it's only front row. And we were kind of democratizing the, you know, the fashion ecosystem in Latin America and saying, yes, you can come with us. We'll learn together. We'll collaborate together. So it was kind of like disrupting everything.
The budget, right? Because I
Oh
think
my God.
that's also a challenge when you come from the corporate world and then you find yourself having to plan a budget and ask for money many times. Because with events, you have to ask for the sponsorships. And I think that one of the things that as women, I'm not gonna say we lack the skill because we have it, but many times when we're independent and we've worked since we came out of college or even before, asking for money is not the easiest thing, but it's part of being an entrepreneur in this corporate transition, right?
Exactly. And that is actually the part of my job at LAFS, asking for money, overseeing partnerships and sponsorships. And it's not easy. And that's the part that I'm saying that you have to develop a very thick skin, because it doesn't mean that if they say no to you, it's a personal thing. It's not, they're not saying no to you as a person or to your project. It might be just like, you know, it's not a good fit right now, or I don't have money to give you right now, or you are not fulfilling the objectives that I have for my company right now. So the amount of no's that I've received in my 8 years of as an entrepreneur at LAFS is, you know, 10x times the amount of yeses that I've received. And you do have to have a lot of resilience. It is hard. I think that, you know, when you come from the corporate world, you are assigned a budget and you just abide by it. When you are setting your own rules and you're setting your own company, you really need to be mindful of that budget. You really become resourceful because at the beginning you don't have much. It's like, okay, I have these few dollars to start. What can I do with this? And then you start knocking on doors. And the most difficult thing I feel, it's not asking for money, but it's living up to your word. And that is the biggest thing. Like, I feel it's not hard to ask for the money. It's really making sure to gain the trust of your partners, to fulfill the promises that you said when you pitched your project and you pitched the summit or whatever, and really nurturing those relationships. We started with so little. Again, we didn't come from the event planning world. So for us, it was like, okay, how hard can it be? We need to put together an event where, you know, we hand called our friends and we were like, hey, can you be a speaker at our first summit? Thanks to our jobs in the fashion world and in our past lives, we developed great relationships that enabled us to invite all these amazing speakers and mentors to come. In the first year, we actually did it in an hotel called the Andas in Riviera Maya. I have no idea how, but they gave us the entire hotel. And I was like, I haven't been able to do that ever again in my life, in my 8 years of labs. They were like, yes, you get 60 comp rooms for all of your speakers and mentors. You get all the event areas for free. And and I was like, wow, this is amazing. First, people that trust in your vision and trust in your product and really put you out there, those are the best people, because it took me a couple of meetings sitting with the property managers of the Andas and pitching it. Yes, and this is going to be a fashion conference and you're going to have amazing designers and amazing people. And yes, it was packed. The hotel was packed, and they had all the visibility that they needed. It was actually a new hotel, so they needed a lot of visibility on social media and whatnot. But it was our first event. Obviously, there was a lot of curve to perfection, because I remember the first time the sound didn't work at all. It was a mess. Obviously, we didn't know what producing an event was like, and the running of the run of show. It was just a disaster. But we had such a great time. We were all together in the same place. The attendees, the ticket holders, were actually having breakfast next to Angel Sanchez or Esteban Cortázar, and they were like, "Oh my God, we're just like right there." And all of them were super like open and accessible to just like provide feedback or to talk to everyone. So that's when we sensed that we had something very special, more than just creating the platform and the space for them to meet. We were creating a community, which I think is the most important thing in creating a business or a product or your entrepreneurship journey. It is creating a community that will sustain you, because without them you're nothing, right? So we developed this amazing community since day one that felt like everybody wanted to collaborate, everybody wanted to be part of something bigger. And that's when we realized that we had something very, very important in our hands.
I think that when I attended LAFS, that was the biggest takeaway that I had, was the sense of community. Everybody was there to help. Everybody wanted to see what you could offer, how they could help you with that, how they could guide you. The workshops were amazing. Like, you had to choose. You really didn't know which one to attend at one point, because it was like, oh my God, that's super interesting. This person that's speaking is great, but I also want to go to this one. And from attending LAFS, I've built so many connections with different people from different parts of the world for different things, and I'm not even in the fashion industry. So it was definitely a great experience, and seeing how you guys managed to evolve it from a summit or something where everybody would gather to becoming such a huge sense of community that people now recognize it. Did you guys envision that this might happen, or did it just happen and you just kept rolling with it?
I think that as any entrepreneur, you have like an initial vision and you're super passionate about it, but there is no linear, you know what I mean? There's no like from point A to point B and it's completely linear. We had a lots of ups and downs, and we still have them. We did create an amazing community, and that has sustained us for 8 years, especially during the pandemic. I feel like that's when it felt that we had created something special with our community, because okay, so we had this amazing 2018 event, right? And then we had this amazing event in Cartagena 2019. We had Imagine Carolina Herrera as a speaker, all of these amazing personalities. And then we're like, this is it. We've made it, And then the pandemic hits, and we're like, we're an in-person event. Like, how are we supposed to survive if our ticket holders are not there? And then we're like, okay, so what do we have to do? Like, we need to pivot. We are becoming, until further notice, a digital platform where our community needs to come to us and we need to help them navigate, what is happening in the world, especially with all of these brands that relied so much on their retailers, or they hadn't developed this direct consumer. Some of them didn't even have, e-commerce back then. And then all of a sudden, commerces were shutting down. They didn't have strong platforms where to sell. And that is when we kind of took care of our community, felt like as one, and really helped them navigate. Nobody knew the answers, by the way. Nobody knew the answers. We just created a lot of focus groups with key people in the industry to help them navigate. It's like, how do you see what's going to happen? And then a buyer would show up in lives. It was Instagram lives and webinars that we created over the span of an entire year. It's like, how can we help you? And that, I think, that again created a very strong sense of community, because all of these creatives were, left with nothing, and they had to start all over again. And as soon as we were able to come back on a physical event, it felt like the community came back to us. They were dying to see each other again, and that's the first time we did it in Miami. They were, they were desperate to see each other again, make business again, and that's when we saw like the power of the community.
Samantha, as a Latina that has had to work in the corporate world in the United States, did you ever feel that it was a challenge to be Latin? And the event is called the Latin American Fashion Summit. Do you think that was a strength, that was a weakness? And what can you say to our listeners and viewers when you're a minority trying to navigate the international space?
It's a great question. And I want to respond to your question in like two different ways. First, I've had the opportunity to work both in Latin America and in the United States. When I was working in the United States, I was a buyer for a company called Everything But Water. And I was there, I lived in the States for about 5 years. And I have nothing to say but to be like super grateful, because they hired me, they trusted, my skills, and I was there, and I remain in contact with them till this day. I never felt that I was in a disadvantage, but it was just my personal situation. Now, coming as an entrepreneur, and I did business with both Latin American companies and companies in the US. There was a time where there was a very blurred line between, oh, your project is called the Latin American Fashion Summit, but I'm a brand that only caters to the US Hispanic. And so I cannot give you money, or I cannot support you. But surprisingly for us, sometimes it happened more in Latin America than in the United States. And this is why. I was based in Mexico when I was doing the first, 2 editions. And I remember knocking on everyone's door in Mexico, and people would be like, that's cute, that's awesome, but I already give money to Fashion Week. And I'm like, but I'm not a Fashion Week. I am, an educational platform. Yeah, that's awesome, and a lot of people didn't believe in the project, right? And because it didn't, first year it happened in Mexico, but the following years, they didn't happen in Mexico. So, and then the opposite thing was happening to Estefania, who was pitching the project in New York to other people, and they were like, wow, this sounds amazing, and let me connect you to this and this and this and this and this person that eventually evolved into great relationships or partnerships. So it got me thinking, like, sometimes as Latinos, we're very jealous of our contacts. We're very jealous of who we share information with. Like, we were wired, I feel, to be protected of what really has taken us so long to pursue or to like, if I have the contact of the CEO of Google because I've been working there for the past 25 years or something like that, it's like, it is my contact, I've earned it. I'm not gonna give it to you for, like, you know what I mean? I felt like that. And then in the States, it was a completely different thing. It's like, oh, she's my neighbor, I'll introduce you to her. Or I know this woman that she's incredible, that she is the VP of blah, 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 blah. Everybody was sharing much more information, contacts, point of view, feedback than in Latin America. And then, yes, of course, when you're asking for money and the platform is called Latin American Fashion Summit and there are KPIs to a company that they need to fulfill, of course, the people that have given us money or that gave us money in the beginning, they were probably checking boxes. They were probably, like, oh, I need to give money to a Latin American, company. Check. We now know that it's more than checking a box. Being a Latina and a minority has played to our advantage, I have to say, because we were in a time, fortunate enough for us, that discussion became relevant. Like, we need to support minorities. We need to support double minorities and give them, SBA loans, or we need to give them, a check, because whatever your reasons are, it might be checking a box, it might be like at the end of the year you're reporting to your company that you support Latin-owned businesses. I don't know, I have no idea, but for us it has worked really, really well. One other thing that I want to add to that is that we have known how to identify our audience really, really well. So when we started, this project was really for Latinos by Latinos. When the pandemic hit, we were a platform that, thanks to pivoting to technology, digital took us to another level. And we started to acquire a completely new audience, which was the US Hispanic audience. And that is the money where, there's a lot of growth, as you know, in the US Hispanic audience. It's one of the biggest the fastest growing demographic group in the United States. They spend money in beauty like no other demographic group in the world. So again, in playing to our advantage, we have now know how to identify our audience, how to put it in front of our clients saying, listen, I have this demographic group and you need her. You need her to spend in your products. So ultimately, the answer to your question is, it has been difficult, yes, as anything in life, and as coming as a minority, but by playing it to your advantage and really rephrasing it, not as a problem, but as, an opportunity to get that brand thing that they do not have. And that demographic group, they are underserved by these companies. So by doing those connections, we have been able to play it to our advantage, for sure.
If you were to give advice to a woman that's looking to start a business and they don't have the right network or the right resources to start, what would you suggest? Because you started first in the corporate and then migrated into entrepreneurship. So what would you say are the best ways to do it? What would you have done differently, maybe?
Okay, so this is a great question, because my husband was asking me the other day, like, what can we do together? Like, let's put a business together. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. So advice number one, you really need to be extremely passionate and obsessed about your mission, your project, your value proposition, whatever you are creating, your product, whatever, your service. Just doing it, because sometimes we just feel like, when I get this amount of money, I'll do it. There isn't a right time. I feel like if you start your journey as an entrepreneur by, waiting for things to happen, they will never happen. You just need to go out and get it. And another thing, it's really getting ready for, and I always say this to the newer generations, we live in a world of immediacy. And, a lot of people expect immediate success overnight. We see it, like sometimes we're like, oh my God, this YouTuber, it's immediately, rich because immediately he went viral and, he now has, she or he has, gazillion followers. It is one out of, I don't know how many million entrepreneurship businesses that actually, are immediately successful. You really need to understand that it is a long haul, that it is going to take you time, years, a lot of bad decisions, a lot of mistakes. Embrace those mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and really understand that it will take you from 7 to 10 years in order for you to be a successful product or company that has developed its own identity, that knows the audience, that knows how to navigate the business. Like it really takes up a lot of time. And some people get really disappointed really easily. It's like, oh, I've been in business, I launched my collection about a year ago and it's not doing well. Guess what? You really need to understand it, in a very different way. And of course, there are some, examples that they've grown immensely in over a year, and those are great, but it really, people really need to understand that entrepreneurship is not a sprint. It is, a marathon, if you will.
No, you're truly inspiring. I think that message goes very far, because like you mentioned, we want everything like for now. It's immediate, because now we can go shopping, we go on Amazon, and we just say, okay, I need a lunchbox for my kids. I just go boom, I get it in 4 hours. Not even the next day. So I think that that's a great message for younger generations, but even also for our generation, because we have gotten used to that as well. When's the next Latin American Fashion Summit?
So the next one is from November 2nd to November 4th. This is going to be held in Miami again, ever since we came back in a physical way after the pandemic back in 2023. We've called Miami our home in the Miami Design District. We will be hosting this year's event at the Moore Building, which is an amazing historic building that went a couple of years ago, became a private members club. So the really cool part of this is going to be that our ticket holders will be able to experience the Moore as if they were members without paying the actual membership for it. And we're going to have great panels, great workshops, networking sessions. And then the pop-up remains at Paradise Plaza with a curation of 35 Latin American brands. We're super excited about this year. It's something that, every November, you might say, like, you've done it for 8 years, you already know the show. Every year it is a surprise. Every year it is an opportunity to do things better. So we're super, super excited about this upcoming November. And anyone who's listening, if you want to join us, you can go into LAFS.com and learn more about the speakers and the mentors that are coming, the agenda. And of course, if you're interested in attending, you can also buy your tickets there.
Well, I think we're going to both be there with you. So.
Definitely. No, I had a blast last year. I can't wait to be there in November. See you all there. Thank you so much, Samantha, for being with us. And don't forget to follow us, Dark Horses, on Spotify and YouTube.
Thank you, Samantha.
Amazing, guys. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon. And we will probably invite you again and again, so you can give us more of your insight about being an entrepreneur, being a leader, and being a successful Latina, which is also amazing.